world. Welcome to the Women of BSV. We are super excited to have today with us as our guest, John Jack Pitts. He's the coolest guy in Bitcoin, the founder of Slictionary.com, an investor that brought us S-Script, as well as a podcaster giving great mindsets and advice on Diamonds in the Rough on Streamanity. So, Jack, we are thrilled to have you with us. Welcome to the conversation.
It's quite an honor. Honestly, I think I now call you the hottest podcast in BSV. So congratulations to you ladies.
Thank you.
Well, we all showed up for you, Jack. No, we've been looking forward to talking to you for a long time. Now, when we talk to people, we often go right back to the beginning. So, just to get a feel for who people are. And can you tell us a bit about like your, history of working? Because I had a quick glance at your LinkedIn earlier, and I see that you were in the Navy back in the 90s, was it?
Back in the 90s, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on the USS Houston for about 4 years, 5 years total in the Navy. And I used it to pay for college, which was nice for my parents, especially. And, I got a nice taste of nuclear engineering. Basically, you go to a school called Nuclear Power School in Orlando, Florida for 6 months, and you learn nuclear reactor theory. And then you go to a working nuclear reactor. Mine was up in Idaho Falls, Idaho, Mormon country, and spent 6 months there running a reactor. And then you get shipped to your boat. Well, actually, then you go to submarine school and you learn how to shoot torpedoes. That's in Connecticut. And then I lived about 4 years in San Diego on the USS Houston. And we were a Pacific Ocean boat. So as they say, as the cliche goes, I joined the Navy to see the world. And what did I see? I saw the sea, which is even more true on a submarine. We made almost no ports of call.
Really?
I think I got to Japan, an Aleutian Island in Alaska, which is really weird, like a ghost town. And then, I don't know, maybe the coolest thing was Hong Kong, which is actually one of my articles, which is about 98, right before it got taken back over by China.
So could you get off you were in a sub then? Or was that you were in a sub, so could you get off the sub?
Could I get off it?
Yeah, when you went to Alaska, did you manage to get off the sub and have a walk around? Where did you go?
Yeah, so I went to Adak, Alaska, which, if you've ever been to the Florida Keys, the Aleutian Islands are everything that the Florida Keys are not. So it's basically a couple of mountains that sort of stretch towards Russia, and there's no trees because it's very cold up there. Mm-hmm. I think it might be inside the Arctic line, but I'm not sure.
So it's a lot higher than Whittier, because I've been to Skagway, Ketchikan, Juneau, and Whittier, and that was on a ship.
Oh, did you say Ketchikan?
Yeah, Ketchikan. I love Ketchikan. What an amazing place. So Whittier was the furthest point we went to. So you were higher than Whittier then?
No, I don't think we were higher than Whittier. I'd have to look at a map, but the Aleutians are kind of odd, and it sort of bows up in the north. There you go.
Got you. Okay.
So do a search for ADAK, Adak, Alaska. And it was the only reason we went there is we had some broken stuff that I'm not allowed to talk about. And we pulled in for repair. And I think there were about 21 people on the island that lived basically on the old Navy base. And it had pretty much been shut down. So it was a bit of a ghost town. And the only two things I remember was there was a kind of a junkyard where all the there used to be probably a couple hundred people on the island, and they all had cars because I guess you can drive around the trails on the island, and all the cars had been junked, and they all had, when you have a wedding and you have all the streamers and stuff coming off the car, it looked like they had this enormous party when the island got shut down, and all the cars were still covered with, party equipment. But they were all junked, sitting in the junkyard.
Wow.
That's really surreal.
And then I remember, nowadays I've seen a lot of American eagles where I live, which is really weird because I lived here before and I never saw any when I was a kid. But it was kind of interesting because the first bald eagle I ever saw was in Alaska, and I almost stepped on about 3 babies hiking up a mountain. Because there's no really a place to put the nest, so they just sort of put it on the hill up high, and we were headed towards the peak, and I almost stepped on it, but somehow managed not to. But it's a weird place, very weird.
Well, the whole thing. I mean, living under the sea in a submarine, is like my worst nightmare. You presumably are not claustrophobic then. I would imagine it gets to you after a while. How did you cope?
Yeah, I only saw one guy go a little bit nuts. But they give you a test before you hit the submarine, and if you pass the test, then you're probably okay. I took the test and failed it because I answered like no comment to all of them because I didn't really want to say yes or no. So I took it very literally. And then I realized that wasn't going to fly, and my time on the submarine was jeopardized. So then I just answered what I thought they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And that worked out.
Wow. So you are all ready for space then. You could go work on the space station for a semester, right?
Kind of, yeah. I have no problems being alone for very long periods of time. The submarine it's like being indoors for months at a time, where you don't see daylight. So yeah, all those kind of space type things. I wouldn't want to have to handle the gravity stuff though.
So what do you know about Terramar? No.
Do you have that underwater?
Early in the conversation, but I want to know if you know anything about Terramar. We got to have a talk about that someday.
Other than in Latin, it means like land, and I think Mar is like a god of war or something. So I don't know anything about it.
Okay, well, we'll bookmark that and come back to that another day.
Okay. So a bit more about, you were in the Navy, you were traveling the world on a submarine. So
Right.
Then where did you go? What did you do after that?
Well, I made an agreement with myself. I was into finance. I started picking stocks when I was like 11. In fact, the first stock I bought was after the crash of '87, which piqued my interest. And I made a promise to myself because I was really into science and engineering. I was a math and physics major at Penn State. But I was also really into business. And so I said, well, I'm going to go in the Navy and try out the engineering stuff for about 5 years. And if I like it, then I'll probably stick with engineering stuff. If I don't like it, then I'll switch to business. So when I got out of the Navy, I had a brother who worked up on Wall Street for a very famous hedge fund called Tiger. And his name is Julian Robertson, the guy that runs it. And he had gone off and formed his own fund. And so I had a very easy opportunity to work at his fund and learn the stock picking business as a professional rather than an amateur, which I was prior to that. Mm-hmm. But so I spent 10 years doing that, which were wonderful years. Learned a ton about business and what companies are doing right and what they're doing wrong, and especially tech, because I was involved in the .com era. Right around 98 is when I started. And I finished at the fund right around the financial crisis. So I went from one bubble to another, and that's kind of shaped my worldview since then. And then 10 years after that, I ran basically a family office, which basically means you're investing your own money, but also other members of the family and investing in kind of the same things I was doing before. People thought I was retired, but I was actually working harder for myself than I was at the fund. And I spent a lot of time researching macroeconomic stuff. And right around when I started figuring out that there really wasn't much in the stock market left, which happens every once in a while, it's sort of a bubble condition. Mm-hmm. I started looking for something else that maybe was going to work if the world kind of went to crud. And a hobby of mine was trying to figure out who Satoshi was, which some Twitter person led me to read the O'Hagan article, and it had the opposite effect on me. I read it and I was like, this is clearly the kind of personality type of a founder that is familiar to me, because I used to talk to a lot of founders back in the .com era, like Reed Hastings at Netflix and the Google founders I met on their campus. So I had the unique opportunity to talk to a lot of now mega billionaires and learn how they think when they were much smaller. And when I saw kind of in that article all the makings of a guy who probably and now I think definitely invented Bitcoin, I kind of realized that in about January of 19, right after the BSV Bitcoin Cash split. But because of my, I would say, because of my economic training, I didn't really view it as money because there was nothing backing it. So I got interested in just Craig, really. And then that led me to listen to all his stuff. And then I realized, holy mackerel, this Bitcoin stuff really is backed by something. It's backed by computation. And so I viewed it as a commodity. And that was the segue for me actually taking all this stuff seriously. And then when I realized after about 4 months of looking into it, by about April, I was sold. And I thought this stuff was going to be the future for the next 20 years. It was the next mega trend. And I promised myself a long time ago during the .com era that if anything came along that was going to revolutionize the tech world or the world in general, that I would dive into it head over fist. So that's what I've done. I am BSV, Bitcoin, basically 100% of my working time, which is a lot of my time.
About what year was this then that you got into BSV? Was it when the fork happened, or?
It was after the fork. So I read the article in about December of 18. And then it took me about a month to figure out that Craig was Satoshi. And then it took me about another 3 months of reading and watching everything that he did to learn more about Bitcoin. And I still remember sitting in my chair with my wife begging me to get in the car to go to Easter Sunday at her parents' house. And I remember kind of watching the rest of a video, and Craig mentioned commodity. And I think he mentioned commodity, but whatever he said, it made me understand that, hey, this thing is basically a computational commodity, Bitcoin. And a light bulb went off, and that's when I started taking it seriously. So April of 19 with BSV at about $50 was where I bought my first Bitcoin.
Good entry point, yeah.
And I never really owned anything prior to that, and I never have since. So I've never touched any other coins.
Wow, you must be like the only one.
I might be, yeah. I like to say that everybody brags about how old they are in Bitcoin, but I think the closer you are to the Genesis release in February of 2020, the happier you are.
Yeah.
If you were there prior to that, you're probably very frustrated by now.
Basically, yes. And so it sounds like your special skill is identifying a good thing. Would you say?
Yeah, that is what I've spent my entirety of my post-Navy, probably even before that, looking for what I would call the biggest, best product companies and trends that there are. And prior to BSV, everybody would have known me on Twitter as the world's biggest Snapchat nut. And I think I bought into that company around 13 in 2017. And it was very, very painful, the whole ride, until post-COVID, which it hit 8. Actually, it went to 4 at some point when the Kardashians got angry at it or something. And then it went to 8 during COVID. And then finally it went to like 83 last September. So I finally was proven right.
Wow.
And then this week, or actually it was last week, Facebook lost about $250 billion worth of value. And Snapchat, after it reported earnings, went up 58% and made like 10 or 20 billion. So I feel like that whole story is finally vindicated, where I saw the writing on the wall that Zuckerberg is just really a very poor CEO. In a way, he's good in that he's learned how to make lots of money, but all of his choices have been near-term results rather than long-term sustainability. And in social, obviously, I think you all know that's really important, because where it leads is you end up selling your customers down the river. And that is the primary difference with Snapchat. I'm not going to say they're a perfect company, but they've taken privacy a lot more seriously than Facebook. And I think even kids understand that, which is why most kids sign up for Snapchat or TikTok, but they don't sign up for Instagram and Facebook anymore. And I think we're starting to finally see that. So everybody who's not a big Zuckerberg fan, I think, is probably going to enjoy the next 10 years.
Yeah.
I see Casey clapping, so we have one.
I completely agree with you there as well. I mean, Twitter lost like 25% as well, didn't it, recently? Wasn't it like somebody sold some of their shares today or yesterday?
Yeah.
The whole market seems to be tipping, doesn't it?
Changing.
Do you think we're at a tipping point yet, John?
You know, it's funny you asked me that. I was busy editing last night an episode that we call the deflationary collapse episode of Diamonds in the Rough, which we'll probably release maybe before the weekend. And it basically outlines the answer to that, which is no. I think we're in a ginormous bubble right now, and we're probably seeing the last, say, 12 months of that. If we even are still in the bubble, we might be on the way down. I mean, a lot of these stocks are down 60-70%. And Bitcoin itself, BSV, what's that down? I mean, from 492 last May to like 80. That's a massive drop. And a lot of the cryptocurrencies have followed that lead, what are also down 60-70%. So that's a pretty nasty decline. I'm not saying we couldn't recover from that a little bit this year, but I would say I feel like we've already started the downward descent, and we just haven't had that moment like we had in like 2008, where everything kind of just goes wrong at once and you
falls down the elevator shaft.
Yeah. Like, people haven't accepted that it's over yet. I think people are buying the dip, and I would highly recommend against that. I could see storing some chipmunking away some BSV for sure, because I think it probably won't move along with the other cryptocurrencies. But I could also tell you that there's a ton of risk in BSV as well, because the fundamentals just aren't. They're building, which is a good thing, and they're growing super fast with very large percentage gains, but off of a very small base. And unless there's outlying conditions that prevent it from going down, it can suffer just as bad in the near term.
Yes, definitely. I think we've got to be a bit more outward looking for sure in BSV and start recruiting people from outside. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. This is from the investment perspective. And Jack, with your history of success in business, you know about the stock market and investing. It was something that I was curious about as a kid and still have more to learn about. But with your knowledge and experience, how would you compare that market to Bitcoin as a commodity market and contrast the two?
You mean the stock market versus BSV as a commodity?
Right.
Yeah, I have a couple articles on this. They're spread out on like Pile Press when that was popular, and Medium I still write on. And what I would say is there are really rare periods where something that everybody's familiar with turns into a commodity. And if you look at stuff like gold and silver, prior to the Electrum coins of 600 BC in what would be now modern day Turkey, it wasn't like gold and silver didn't exist. It was everywhere for thousands of years prior to that. But it commoditized with the coins, meaning governments like the Greek Empire sanctioned a certain size silver coin, the drachma, and made it standard. And because they were an empire, it traveled around and got pretty popular. And that's very similar to what Bitcoin is to computing. So computing isn't new, and even cloud computing is not new. Cloud computing has been a trend for over a decade now, since Amazon Web Services sort of launched in, I think it was 04, 05, 06, somewhere around there. And the problem with it is it's all a walled garden. So Amazon Web Services and Apple iCloud and Google Cloud are the big three. And they all compete, but it's hard to switch from one to the other. And a perfect example of this is Netflix switched from pure Amazon Web Services to kind of dual sourcing clouds for their video content to Google as well. And that for several reasons. One, we're finding out now, which is the cancel thing can happen to any company, right? If a company just doesn't like you, like Amazon, they can just delete your whole database. And I think you've probably heard these stories. And now that I run a company that is on Google Firebase, I hear these stories all the time, and it scares the living hell out of me. So Bitcoin's arriving just in time. It's really not coming fast enough. And so I think what Bitcoin is a commoditization of this cloud computing where everybody has to compete using the same standard. And this happens over and over again. If you think about the oil barrel, right, is a commoditization of oil, and West Texas Intermediate is a grade that the oil has to meet in a certain location. And you guys in the UK have Brent crude, and those are commodities. And the same thing with the steel I-beam. At one point, everybody had their own different shape of a steel I-beam. And then about the time the Empire State Building was built in New York, the two companies, Bethlehem and US Steel, that were the main competitors, realized they had to kind of agree on an I-beam. And so that became a bit of a commodity. And this happens in electricity. It happens in your rail gauges. It happens. And I think the coolest one that's really modern is the shipping container. And so we used to just have stevedores moving the bananas up and down the gangplank. And then Mr. McLean of McLean Trucking, which at the time was the biggest trucking company in the South of the United States, was tired of watching his trucks sit on the gangplank waiting for the stevedores. And he just thought, why is there not a crane with a universal sized box that just goes from ship to my truck, and then from my truck to the train, and it fits in all the tunnels and bridges. You don't have to redo any of this stuff. And that's a protocol, right? Those are rules. And that's all it is. That's all a commodity really is. It's you take an asset, whether it's oil or shipping containers, and you give it rules. It's got to be 8 feet by 8 feet by 16. It's got to have little loops at the top so the crane can grab it easily. It's got to be made of a certain quality metal, and it becomes universal, and everyone uses it. And what it does is it levels the playing field such that we don't compete on separate standards or walled gardens. We all compete on the level playing field. We see this in sports all the time, right? Basketball has a 3-point line, a foul line, a height for the hoop. And pretty much everybody agrees on this. There's little variations between Europe and the United States, but the NBA kind of sets the standard. And that's a protocol. And that's all Bitcoin is. It's basically, yeah, we have cloud computing that's already been invented, but why don't we standardize it into these things called transactions? We have inputs, we have outputs. There's a standard code that we use called the scripting language. And you put all that together, and it's just a set of rules that everybody can agree upon, and we don't have to fight over them.
Such a great point, John. And the thing about the situation at the minute is that we've got all these different cryptocurrencies, all different rule sets, and for the vast majority of them, they're still changing all the time as well. Correct. And it's no wonder business isn't getting done.
Imagine, Ruth, great point. Imagine that some smart engineer said, you know what? We can ship more bananas through the Rocky Mountains if we just widen the train tunnels by 3 feet, right? And we widen the tracks. So the trains, we make them wider. Sounds brilliant, right? It would actually work. But the problem is, for the small amount of coin that these train companies would spend to basically create another, a wider set of cars, You would then also have to lift up and change the width on every track that there is in the world. Then you would have to open up all the tunnels, and then you would have to rebuild all the bridges, and then all the cranes that like move. Like, in other words, there's an entire infrastructure built on the fact that the train gauge is a certain width. And if you change that, it's chaos, and it's a massive expense, and it's not worth it. And I think that is why I think Craig and nChain and Bitcoin Association are so adamant about not changing the protocol, because they realize that for a business like mine, if you change that protocol, it's not just me, it's every business then has to do something different. And this is a common story throughout my career in analyzing tech companies, which is Microsoft used to have this saying, if you read the book Hard Drive, and it was kind of a joke, but it was real. And the joke inside the walls of Microsoft was, we're not done with the newest operating system until everybody's stuff is broken on it. Right. And this is how they won Office, right? When WorkPerfect and Lotus 123 didn't work on the newest operating system, guess what did work? Microsoft software, Excel and Word worked perfectly. And they released it right when it all worked. So while all the other companies are scrambling with the new operating system, having troubles because it's changed, they've changed the foundations of the building, Microsoft has no problems. They just release Office and they take over all the market share. And that's the problem with, there's the real decentralization, right? If you have one company deciding the standard, they change it to favor themselves. And so I think Bitcoin is an important moment in history that's very rare, in that it has commoditized computation so that we can at least all compete on a level playing field.
Wow, there's a lot there. I'm going to continue thinking about that. That's really good points. So when Microsoft was sued for being a monopoly back in the, was it 80s or 90s, whenever it happened?
1999. And you know who the firm was that prosecuted them?
No.
Bowie Schiller, the same guy who prosecuted against Craig in Florida.
Wow.
Yep.
That's quite a connection.
Yeah, and remember the Florida Chad with Al Gore versus Bush and the big controversy?
Yes.
He was the lawyer for the that argued the Supreme Court case on behalf of Al Gore.
Wow.
So he's got he's probably the most famous lawyer I know of. And basically Craig's team beat them, which is pretty impressive.
Wow.
Wow.
I've never heard of him. His name's Bowie?
If you look it up, David Bowie's, Boies. I know it sounds like an English punk rocker, but it's spelled differently.
The connection.
No, but this is the advantage of having the long view. Sorry, Casey, say it again.
I just said the connections are everywhere when you just start pulling the strings.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody knows that Judge Reinhardt and Jeffrey Epstein were good pals.
Yeah, well,
So
never mind.
I guess this is why Korppi is going after Craig right now.
Yep.
For his patents, because he who defines the protocol has got such a head start over everyone else, just like Microsoft did by writing the operating system. Yeah,
in my opinion, I think Korppi is a delay tactic, because if you look into the Peter McCormack case, the podcaster, and think about the series of events, and I do this all the time for my job. I never have all the information, but if you have A, B, C, L, and M, you can kind of put together the rest of the alphabet. And it's called imperfect information. And as a stock analyst, you just have to get comfortable with just not knowing everything. So what happened in the McCormack case was Craig's side presented all his evidence. It was something like 9,000 documents, all proving that he was Satoshi, because the number one thing in a libel case, or his libel case, was proving that he was Satoshi. And then after that, you prove the damages. So those are the two necessary things to win a libel case. So the other side, McCormack, got financed by Tether, basically. And Tether's lawyer, Stuart Hogener, went up against Craig. And once the judge and everybody accepted Craig's evidence, and once Stuart Hogener saw it, all of a sudden, Hogener and Tether dropped the case. And people don't remember this, but there was about 3 months there where Peter was complaining online that his lawyer had left him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that was not a temporary situation. That there's an important distinction where in UK law, if you lose the case and you have a backer, your backer is also liable. And so if you think about how big the Peter McCormack case could be for damages, I mean, we're talking about the difference between BTC's market cap, which is generally around $1 trillion, and BSV's market cap, which is around $2 billion. So effectively, that's around $1 trillion. So you can imagine that as much money as Tether has, they don't have enough to cover a potentially ginormous liability. And so the best thing to do is just drop the case, which is what they did. Now, why would they drop it right then and there after seeing the evidence? Well, it's pretty obvious, right? I mean, if you see something like, I don't know, a credit card receipt for Bitcoin.org from August 2008, which would be a really smoking gun, or you saw other things and all that evidence, and you realize you were going to lose, and then the liability could be limitless, well, you just get out of Dodge.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened. And they came back later only because they changed their argument from trying to prove that Craig was not Satoshi. They gave up on that, but they switched it to, we're just going to prove that Craig's reputation was already damaged by the time Peter defamed him. So in that case, they screwed up because they waited too long. And it ended up, I think, right around CoinGeek New York, the judge ruled that we're not really going to accept any of your new evidence for this new way that you're going to argue the case. And so the Peter McCormack lawyers, including the Tether lawyer, Stuart Hoganer, they're kind of screwed. So they're preparing to lose. The only question is how much money they're going to lose, whether Craig can prove damages. So that's the only remaining part of the case. But that could have told anybody who cares and is willing to put even a half a cent of research in last fall that for all practical purposes, Craig already proved that he was Satoshi in a court of law even before the Kleiman case. And COPA came out right in the beginning of last year, right as Hoganer came back and agreed to change the case to a different argument. And why do I think that happened was I think Dorsey, who's supporting only BTC, and some of the other COPA members like Coinbase and Digital Capital Group and Barry Silbert, they realize that they think that if they delay long enough, Craig's name getting out as Satoshi, that all these layer 2 things they can get to work, right? So it's a timing thing. It's like,
right.
What is Dorsey famous for at Twitter and Square? Well, he's famous in the Bitcoin world. He's famous for trying to put a bunch of engineers on Lightning Network.
He just posted a lightning strike today. Like, I just saw.
Exactly. Yeah.
The only thing he posted is a lightning strike emoji.
Yeah, and as we all know, I mean, we have El Salvador as some of the proof, but just Lightning Network itself, it doesn't really work right for many reasons. Most
never can.
Technical, yeah. And if you're Dorsey, you're a software guy, so you just think, oh, if I just give it to my guys for another 6 months to 18 months, as the old cliche is in Ethereum, if I just give Ethereum another 18 months and I give Lightning Network another 18 months and Solana can get all their kinks out because they fail like every month, maybe in another 18 months we can, with enough money and coders, we can just pave over all of our mistakes. And this is a very software-like mentality, but it ignores certain facts like, the blockchains are going to compete on price, they're going to compete on speed, and they're going to compete on security. And all those things require scale. And if you cannot scale, then you're not going to have any of those things, and you're not going to have a chance no matter how much money and software time you put into it. So I think COPA is a delay case. It's a Hail Mary. And I don't think they intend on winning. I think they just intend on preventing Craig from getting any kind of notoriety anytime soon.
Wow. It's an interesting take on it. Yeah. I figured that they were trying to basically, block him from being able to enforce his patents. You don't think that might be part of it?
I do think that's part of it, but and the patents will stand on themselves. It's the COPA case really isn't about patents. The COPA is kind of another retrial of Craig Satoshi.
Yeah.
So even if Copa won or if Craig won, it really would have nothing to do with the patents, other than they're trying to shame him in some way. I honestly just think it's a delay tactic. But sure, the patents are super important. I agree with you there. I just think that those would be different cases. I think the patents are more important in Craig's case, where he's claiming, what's the case that kind of hits the patents? Is it the one where he's got his coin stolen? I don't know. I'd have to think about it a little bit more.
Yeah, getting his coins back.
No,
Yeah, no, this is it. It's like a multi-stranded attack, really. And it seems like you say that they're just trying to continue the defamation and continue, with the don't look over here, Aussie man bad stuff narrative, and see how long they can string that out for.
Yeah, and I think that's the nice part of it all. The bad part of it all, or the sordid part, is stuff like the attack last summer, the double spend attack, which I think was, in my opinion, a very constructed attack, not meant to steal anything really, although I think it was probably a large moneymaker for certain characters in the crypto space. Tether, Binance. But I think it was more about defaming BSV in a way that was, frankly, very clever. I've got an article that'll soon come out on that whole topic.
It's quite a heavy hit, wasn't it?
It's definitely heavy. I felt it. I mean, I know certain things that happened in my world that would have been a lot brighter for BSV had that not happened, especially with the timing of which it occurred. And it's absolutely no coincidence that in, I think, April or May, BSV was like almost $500. And by the time those attacks hit, actually the first attack was 2 days after BSV hit its low for the year. So in the stock world, that's a very common thing. It's called buy the bad news. But how did anybody know to buy it 2 days ahead of the first attack? Well, that's maybe somebody did a lot of shorting at 490 and we're covering before the, if BSV was, I don't know what point, I think it got into the low hundreds, right? So if you hadn't even released the bad news yet and it was already trading in the hundreds, well, you can start covering. You're short. So I see a lot of these things happening, which are very familiar to me because I lived through the .com nonsense and there was all kinds of criminals and nasty stuff going on. Same thing with the banking real estate crisis. It's practically my job to uncover fraud. And so it's like I have a sixth sense or a smell about it. I can see it coming and I know all the tricks. And so with imperfect information, I can just sort of put together things that other people wouldn't normally see.
So if you were to presume to give Craig some advice, what kind of advice would you give him?
I think Craig and Calvin have been doing a great job, honestly. In my world, a lot of Wall Streeters complain that they don't think that they're doing a good job marketing BSV. I think it's the opposite. I think they're doing an amazing job marketing BSV. They're going right for developers, which is the right tactic. They've always been true to the cause. They haven't, talked about price or tried to do anything weird stuff. That is common in the rest of crypto. So I don't really have any advice for them. I would say, given how rich they will probably get from all this over time, my only advice would be to somehow be humble once you're rolling in billions, because that seems to be a big problem where, we have a lot of billionaires that we kind of hate now. But 20 years ago, you didn't hate them, right? I actually liked them. Like there was a point in time where I thought Dorsey was one of the coolest guys around, running two different ginormous companies. And that wasn't that long ago. And now I think he's making really poor decisions and playing a lot of politics where it doesn't belong. And I see that as huge mistakes. Now, that's different from somebody like Zuckerberg, who I think from the very first second that he started in business was making bad decisions. But these other guys, I don't view the Google founders as particularly evil when they started, but there's something about going from millionaire to billionaire that's a little scary. And maybe it's because you're surrounded by so many yes men that you don't take criticism. I don't know what the reason
Bezos isn't winning any hearts, is he?
No, and it's, I used to call him the father of the internet because the stuff he did with Amazon to keep scooping it out of the gutter was amazing, frankly. I mean, he should be studied for a lot of his business decisions. They were amazing. But Maverick, to be honest. But yeah, as they get older, and they all do it, you start to figure out that you can get things done quicker by sort of cheating, and you can use your wealth as a weapon rather than how you built the wealth, which was creating a great product or changing the world in a positive way. I mean, the Microsoft operating system in itself was, pretty novel concept. I would argue that Apple probably had it right more often, but Apple had its own problems. So congratulations for a great operating system over the years. But something happens towards the end where I think they just start using their money as a weapon, and because they can. And I don't know when that happens or when you kind of turn to the dark side. But so I don't have any advice for them now. I think they're doing a great job. I would just say, as long as you can manage to stay humble somehow, then I think the rest of the world's your oyster.
Remember your roots. And I think that's one thing Craig does quite often, isn't he? Talks about his roots and his upbringing and what it was like to be poor and, have a single working mother and so on. And I think he's constantly trying to better himself. And he's got some sort of ethics and values that he's reaching for. And I just don't hear any of these other billionaires talking like that at all. They seem to have lost sight of what it is to be human and what to reach. Sorry, but that's my take on it. That's one of the reasons why I admire Craig, because he does. It's all coming from, it's all heart centered.
Agreed. Well, what would you ladies advise him to do?
God, that's a difficult question to answer. I was hoping you'd answer it.
Yeah, you had no problem giving it to me, though, didn't you?
No, it's a tough one. I mean, I think largely he's doing all the right things, but I don't know. I'd really love it if they could stop the shorting.
I think he has been very angry. He stated it 2 days ago. I saw it. It wasn't a tweet. I think it was a Slack, but he said that he's been angry for very, very long, and that needs to stop. And he's gonna, he wants to be a better person altogether. So I have no advice. That's very good to admit.
Very self-aware. Yeah.
Yes, I love that attitude.
Success is the best revenge.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, he's going to enjoy the shit out of it when he gets there. Yeah.
It's funny. I went through a period, the 10 years that I spent after I left my fund, I've always had the same theme, which is apply your money where it would do the world the best good. And it's always been a secret trick. And so you're talking to someone who probably helped Google search along and, travel companies and all kinds of things from .com era that I supported because I thought it was good for the world. And if you think that way, it makes you a good investor long-term, probably a very poor investor short-term because things take a while. It actually takes good things longer to happen. And I think BSV is living in that same world right now where unfortunately all the other cryptocurrencies, they get paid 10 and 20 times for doing jackassial things. Whereas everybody in BSV who's working like you guys are to actually make products and things like that, it takes a long time. It just takes longer to be honest and good. But I think if you look at the kind of history, my personal history after the banking crisis hit was I still saw a lot of bad actors in the banking and real estate world. And I spent a lot of time trying to short them right as the government was bailing them out. And that cost me a lot of time. It cost me a lot of money, but more so than anything, it cost me my sanity. So I was losing it, because when you're fighting a bad guy and the bad guy's winning by cheating with bailouts and all this other stuff, it can drive you insane. And there was, unlike now where I think the world's starting to see a lot of the bad actors with a lot clearer vision, back then everybody just didn't really know what was going on. And so they kind of ignored it. And that frustrated me because I felt very alone for a very long period of time. And I think when I came out of that, I realized one huge thing, which is if you focus on fighting all the time and trying to kill the thing that you don't like, well, you're wasting a lot of time not focusing on the thing that you do like. You're focused on the darkness of the tunnel rather than the light at the end of the tunnel. And the light at the end of the tunnel takes a lot of work to get to. And so you don't have time to fight people. And so it's kind of like speed bumps, right? You just look past the speed bumps because you're looking at the horizon and the goal. And the goal is, to use the old cliche, changing the world, making a great product, doing something wonderful that people can appreciate and make everybody's life better. And you don't have time to focus on fighting.
Which is Slictionary, man. That is, I'm so grateful for you to preserve the definition of words right now during this time when they're doing all that stuff. Like, we need this so bad. So you just ate your own words there with what you've created for this space for us. I mean,
explain it for us, John, because I know we probably know, but not everybody does. Tell us about Slictionary.
Yeah, thanks for noticing, Casey, because I think this is the point. This is the next point that we want to make, is to kind of go backwards from the teaser that I did in CoinGeek New York, which is, hey, if you get involved in this early enough, like people could have gotten involved in Bitcoin in 2009 and 10, you can end up making a lot of money, especially if you're creative. I mean, our platform allows you to make NFTs. Like, forget about 1 of 200. It's rare. I'm talking about 1 of 1, right? Every definition is its own beautiful thing. And, to always use the example I love best, which is, if Craig defines Bitcoin in our dictionary, it is going to be a one-of-a-kind event. He probably won't have to ever do it again. It's like the white paper, right? It just becomes an artifact in time. And it's special because unlike another dictionary where you just look up a word like Bitcoin, in our dictionary, you look up a word by Bitcoin and it's written by the guy who invented the word, by the guy who invented the protocol. And I think that's really special. And the way we think about Slictionary from the very beginning was it solves a couple of problems that I think the internet has that kind of makes it a bit of a sewer, I like to call it. And the most obvious one is just everything has to be ad-based. I don't think so. I mean, when Slictionary is up and running and we have most all the words and everything, and you come and look up definitions, not only are you going to get the best definitions, you're going to get it ad-free, no distractions. So we're not trying to, feed you some nonsense while you're just looking up to learn something. But also, it's going to be so cheap. I mean, to look up the amount of words that most people look up in a given year is like maybe 24 words. So you're telling me you wouldn't pay 24 cents right now to have no ads in a piece of the internet, and then multiply that times all the other apps you might use. And I would say you don't value your time if you're not willing to get rid of the ads, because I mean, frankly, our site is going to be much more beautiful, much more informative, and less distracting. So how could you not pay us 24 cents over a year to look up, 24 words? It's crazy. You would be crazy not to. But that's kind of the easy one. The more bigger reason for Slictionary is we think that books are bad. And that sounds nuts, but the thing about books is they're not that old of a thing. They've only been around for less than 1,000 years, right? And as intellectuals, we all think that, well, you got to be reading versus watching TV or watching Women of BSV on a podcast. Got to be reading. That's what makes you smart. And sure, in the last 300-400 years, that's absolutely the case. But there's a new world now, right? The computer has allowed us to conduct operations the way humans have conducted since the time we first started talking and writing. And that is face-to-face communications as fast as you can talk and as fast as you can transfer. And I think the world shouldn't be surprised that the future of computing isn't typing things into a screen. It's talking to a robot and asking a question. Look at Star Trek: The Next Generation. You just ask Commander Data a question and he gives you the answer. He's a robot. He's basically Google in human form. Your Apple Watch is the first shot across the bow in that area, right? I mean, it's Dick Tracy all over again. Who wants to type? You just talk to Dick Tracy, the watch, and you say, give me the definition for Bitcoin. And then you hear Craig's voice come out and he goes, it's a peer-to-peer cash system or whatever, you know? And that's fast, right? That's the way you want your information 90% of the time. 10% of the time, sure, you might need a computer or a keyboard. And that makes sense. But this wearables trend isn't going to stop with just the Apple Watch or the Snapchat glasses and sort of the, Minority Report and all those movies kind of telling you where things are going. But we think at Slictionary that definitions are going to be probably more through like something like your Apple Watch. We think that language was built on talking, not on writing and reading. And so you'll notice that our definitions are very visual. When a child learns what a fire truck is or what a ball is, they don't look it up in a book. They ask their mother, they ask their father, or they just see it. They see it enough times where they go, oh, that's a ball. I get it now, right? And they learn these words before they even remember learning them. And I think as adults, we can do the same thing. We can learn visually. We can learn through a quick 10-second video or maybe even a 3-minute video. And we don't have to read everything. Sure, as a backup, we're going to provide the written definition. But another concept is it is not written in stone, right? If you want the original definition for Bitcoin and it's economic, we will save that. And so the one written in 2021 or 2022 by Craig will stay there for thousands of years. But if Bitcoin takes on a new meaning, the word woke, it used to mean just getting up from a nap. Now it means something else. Based or whatever the kids are saying now, like it means something else now than it used to mean. And that needs to be recorded as well. So language and diction changes every single day, right? 20 years ago, no one knows what fascism meant. And then Snoop Dogg came along, and maybe it was him or maybe it was his unpaid friend who's not making money off of that definition, right? But the guy who sort of first brought it into the vernacular should get paid on it. And that's what we allow. So we think we're the perfect dictionary at the end of the day. At scale, everyone is a writer of the dictionary, but we only reward the ones who economically provide either the fastest learning lesson or a little bit of humor or entertainment. And so we want our definitions to inform you as efficiently and as quickly as possible. And our algorithms and our AI, if you want to call it that, or our particle swarm optimization, if you want to use all the MIT terms, we use all of that. And what we're doing is creating a feedback loop where just the repeatable information, our company name is called Structured Linguistics. So we're not trying to structure your conversations or Facebook or your tweets or your iMessages. We're trying to structure things that are repeatable, and a definition is repeatable. And so the dictionary is our first product. And we think the most important thing is that we're returning language back to the way it always was before Merriam-Webster monopolized it. And that is giving it back to the people where it's always been, right? Merriam-Webster's, we like to think that there's some kind of like fact machine about a definition. They're not a fact machine. When new words go into Merriam-Webster, some English professor has to sit around with 3 other guys and discuss what the perfect, at the moment definition is. And then they decide it and everybody pretends it's a fact afterwards. But it's a moving thing, right? Language always evolves. English, 1,000 years from now, probably won't even be spoken. We don't speak Latin anymore. And that was the language of the Roman Empire. And so we're going to lose all these words. And so what Slictionary will do is move with the people, because it's built by the people. And so the guy who's the best guitar maker in the world might define guitar. And the guy who invented Bitcoin will define Bitcoin. And you ladies should have probably all defined women in the dictionary already.
You're right. There's so many. The more you talk, the more I think, oh God, come on, Ruth. Snap it out of it. Go and write some definitions.
Maybe, Ruth, can you open the platform and maybe Jack can run us through it? I would have to jump off, but I will look it up later. Then
let me try. Hang on.
Thanks for hanging out, Micah. It's good to see you.
See you later then. Thank you, Jack.
Bye.
Bye.
Ah, lucky you.
Right. Well, I just logged in because we were just checking whether the money button worked. But this is the home page. This is quite a cool animation. I like this.
Yeah, we've gotten great reviews on beauty, but a lot of we always get criticized by what do you call them? Consultants. You tell me. I think we have some consultants in the room. Are you always being totally honest, or is some of that a little bit of salesmanship?
Well, I'm a web designer, and I would kill to get my hands on your website.
It is. I mean, it's a great
it works beautifully,
but it's really hard to look out for a period of time, if that makes sense. Like it.
Yeah.
After a while, it gets really like, whoa.
You wouldn't stay on this page for long, presumably. Yeah. So let's look up the word that I put about.
I would look at this and just think about, oh, the universe. It would take me someplace else rather than to be useful.
Oh, there we go.
So wait a minute. Let's talk through this. How do we, like, you need a money button. Okay, so talk through every step, Ruth, so that people who've never used Slictionary before, we know exactly what steps we're taking. And how
right. Well, yeah. I mean,
etc. Let John explain it. Jack, sorry.
By virtue of opening the browser window, I was logged into my money button because I'm logged into my money button on other windows. So there's that. But I just literally just put a word in here and paid a penny to do a search. Go ahead, John. You tell us what we should be doing.
Yeah, so the first thing is you can have a little bit of fun with Slictionary by just typing in some random letters, like maybe 2 letters. And the drop down, which we call look ahead, should tell you of any words in our dictionary that already exist that you can sort of browse. So if you see an interesting one, you can then click on it and it'll auto complete for you. And you'll be guaranteed to get something, because we only have about 1,300 definitions in the dictionary at the moment, because we're purposefully want people to define everything. We don't want to pre-populate the dictionary with a database of open source definitions, which we could easily do. We could have done that on day one. And so the whole point is to make the dictionary experience truly unique. We want people to define the words and do their best job and compete. So what you're seeing here is there's actually, I think that's 2 different people. It looks like Saidam probably corrected himself. Maybe he did it twice because he probably had an error in there or something. He's one of our top wordsmiths. But you can now shift left and right and get an option as to maybe you think the 3rd definition is the best or the one that helped you the most. And by hitting the light bulbs on this page, by hitting one light bulb, you're voting for the thing that you thought helped you the most, the thing that you were kind of looking for.
Oh, I see.
And maybe that's, maybe the picture helped you, maybe the description, maybe it was the sentence. And we'll have other things like etymology. We'll have antonyms and synonyms. We're adding all that this year. And so it'll get a little bit more involved.
I was going to say, this is kind of woo-woo, okay? But it would be really freaking cool if you had a feature that played a word in reverse, too.
You mean like a Grateful Dead album or something, or Black Sabbath?
Well, I'm just saying there's a lot of words that mean something in reverse, too, in the English language, in all languages, actually, reverse speech. But anyways, it's just my thoughts on giving everybody everything in one place on words, and also preserving, indigenous languages on here, I think would be another really important use case, because that's something that's, definitely being suppressed, is all these sacred cultural languages.
100% agree. And all that is in our future, so long as things move down the line as a company. I think that what you just said is completely important. And there's all kinds of little tricks that we can do. And part of that is going to come on the main page, where if you go back, Ruth, to the main page, you'll see that
the home page.
Yeah, the home page. Yeah. So just if you hit the Slictionary, like any page, it'll go with the home page. Now you see that we have that little plus button on the left of the seek bar there.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you what that did.
And that just takes you to, you can define anything that you want, right? You can make up a word. You could put your Bitcoin address or private keys in here if you like. If you hit that hide from children button, it won't show up in the look ahead, and you can actually hide things in here, which is kind of an interesting thing. And we'll have a whole product based on that later called Private Dictionary, where you ladies could have your own vernacular. And if you put in the right code word in the front page, then you would be able to see all these definitions that no one else can see, but only you ladies would be able to see it. So if you have like cute nicknames for each other or whatever, you could actually define those and put them in the private dictionary, and you would all be able to see them, but no one else would see them. They wouldn't know they exist.
So twins could have put their own twin language in and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, so you could have like literally every language on the planet in Slictionary defined by people from everywhere around the world.
Yeah,
all in one place.
So important. That's so cool.
And because you've got the microphone, which I have tried, but I still couldn't get it working. And I did.
So the microphone, I guess some people get confused by it, but basically you press it once, you record, you press it again to stop, and then a button will show up when you're done where you can listen to what you recorded, and you can either keep it or you can press the record button again and do it over again. You should probably, I don't know, Diddy, how would you suggest that we give people? Here's my theory on UI UX, and you can say whether you hate it or not, but everybody probably has learned how to drive a car, and yet there's no instructions on the dashboard, right? So you get in, you best you have is maybe some numbers on the stick shift, and that's it. And yet everybody knows how to drive a car. And so I think Snapchat did this, and it was very confusing when people first used it because they didn't know what they were doing. But I think the power users are going to be the wordsmiths, the people writing things, and they're going to come back often enough to figure all this stuff out. But the main user is just a knowledge seeker, and all they need to know how to do is write a word and search for it. And I think that part's pretty straightforward. So if you're getting confused on something like this, the smithing page, I'll tell you that, yeah, there's going to be a lot of improvements to make this page easier. However, it's going to be a page that a certain class of our users are going to use all the time. And they're just going to get as familiar with it as you might be with a spreadsheet or with iMovie or any other application you use where you're not reading how to do everything from the get-go. You're learning by actually driving the car and figuring stuff out as you go along.
You know what, John? What we often go through websites with people when we're interviewing them, and there are a lot of websites out there, particularly token minting websites, things like that, where it's not clear what to do next. And it's kind of like quite a good exercise, really, for someone like us to go through it and not know what to press next and not know what to do. There's room probably for this in most BSV businesses right now.
Well, the best way that I see to be able to describe anything is literally it wouldn't take more than about 30 seconds, a little intro video on your front page. And that is it. And that's all you would need. And it would be literally about 30 seconds.
Talk you through it.
Than that to actually go
Diddy,
through it.
that is a great point, and that is something we're definitely going to do. But there's one thing that you guys don't realize that I think is probably important to point out immediately, which is we are in something like month 7 of our existence, and we have to. There's only 2 of us at the moment, and we have to focus all of our time on sort of Bitcoin-y technical solutions for things like tokens is one of the things we're working on right now. We have a whole other product that is associated with that picture you see, that gray picture, where we can make it so that people are adding original artwork rather than just, pictures off the internet that they're kind of borrowing. And so these are the things we kind of have to get done to get to the next level, so to speak. And what we give up is all the little things that would make this site really hum in terms of, improving the UI, the UX, making things a little faster, of course. And these are all things we're aware of, but we sort of have to give them up in order to get what in the software world we would call the MVP product done, where everything kind of works the way it's supposed to. And the people who are really religious and early adopters, they figure it out. And then we start, when we can afford to, when we don't have to focus so much on the Bitcoin-y stuff and the technical underpinnings, then we can go back and say, all right, let's make this really great for Joe Sixpack and the average user to figure out quicker. And adding something like a video button on the front where someone can just play a 3-minute video, which we already have, to make that easy. Those are just little tiny things that, we should be adding them. We add them occasionally to make things a little bit better as we go, but they're almost secondary. And the other thing I would tell you is we're really not at MVP yet. And so we've released the product before we should have. We shouldn't even exist right now. We let you play with it because we think it's important to give you a taste of what's going on, because some of our users are really early adopters and they already love it. And we wouldn't have those people be sort of spokespeople for the company if we didn't put the product out when it wasn't completely ready.
And the world needs it now. We don't need to wait till you're ready. So thank you for doing that. Because I just haven't gotten in here we've been so busy trying to juggle everything. I haven't gotten in here and done some of the words that I'd like to do. But
well, listen,
over time.
If you're going to be an early adopter, here's the best way to use. This is how I use my own site. I force myself to look things up on Slictionary, even when I know they're not in there. So type in, I don't think we have oxymoron yet. Why don't you try that one? We do. How about, think of another word.
Ubiquitous.
We probably have that, but go ahead. Search for ubiquitous. Yeah, we have that one.
So
how about ubiquity? Just ubiquity. Okay, we don't have that. So go ahead and swipe. Now, this is called the Lucky You page. We kind of took your penny and gave you nothing in return, right? So a UX designer would say that's about the most heinous thing you could do to someone who's using the site. However, we have 2 free options on the left and the right. On the left, go define it yourself. It's an opportunity, right? That's why we say Lucky You. Because if it's not in our dictionary, and as we get up to scale, the way Bitcoin did from 09 to say 12, you're going to make money by being early. So mine it. It's like being an early miner. So go write the definition, do your best job. And when the next person comes in, just like you did looking for ubiquity, this time they're going to find it. And then they're going to hit the light bulb, and you're going to get paid every single time for being early, right? Plus, you're going to get better at it, at writing the definitions, because you realize what works and what doesn't work if someone's competing with you and your definition's not getting hit. It's the other guys that's getting hit. So that competition part is also part of the game, right? We're building almost like an athlete, like an intellectual or artistic athlete that competes with other athletes. May the best man win. Now, on the right is the lazy man's option. You're taking the penny and you're making a word bounty out of it for 1 penny. Now that's not worth much because nobody's going to want to write a definition for a penny. But every time someone searches for ubiquity and presses that set bounty button where they for free can send their penny that they paid into word bounty, it accumulates. And so imagine a president like President Harding said the word normalcy and he used it incorrectly. And they made fun of him during his presidential election in 1904 or whatever. But had that happened in the age of Slictionary, imagine 20 million Americans looking up normalcy, and it's not in the dictionary. 20 million times a penny is $200,000 which would go on to Word Bounty in a 1-week contest, and everybody in the Navy, it would be like winning the lottery, right? Everybody would try their hand at writing a definition because you could win $200,000 if yours gets the most votes.
That's really
now
cool.
You see the brilliance of it. So a lot of things we're building are built for, it's just like Bitcoin. Craig built all the stuff and it's supposed to work at scale. And so people don't understand something like transaction fees or how the proof of work gets smaller and it does become energy efficient. People don't get that because we haven't gotten to scale yet. And it's the same thing here. We're building things looking far into the future such that when Snoop Dogg says his next weird word and everybody looks it up, boom, there's a huge opportunity for an experience. By that time, we'll have experienced wordsmiths who are like jocks, right? They'll have a batting average for how successful they are in the word bounties. And they'll go, oh, shoot, here's a $10,000 word that just popped up in 3 hours. And you got 1 week.
How much do you get when people hit the light bulb?
This is great. You get 0.7 of a penny.
Okay.
So the penny fee that we charge you, we give 70% of that to the definition, to the writer of the definition or the owner of the definition who provided the answer.
Okay.
And that's important because at scale, even a top 10 dictionary gets something like 50 million hits a month, which is, what is that, times 12? We're talking 600 million to 1 billion seeks per year. And I can go into a lot of detail on that. But the bottom line is some of these definitions that are really good, I think will probably come out. You can earn $1,000 a year from them and you don't have to touch it, right? You wrote the definition for 10 minutes and you're earning, and you could earn $1,000 every year like clockwork on it. So if you had, say, 100 definitions like that because you were early, I mean, you could retire on this stuff, right? Yes. As we continue to grow, as I push it into schools and home schools and all this other stuff.
Pass that wallet to your kids.
Yeah. So my son, you can look up the word chicken, and he taught me a little something, how to be creative with the audio button. And he didn't just say the word chicken, which is mainly what we thought people were going to use it for, to tell people how to say the audio. But he then used, well, you can just play it. I think his is that first one there. Yeah. No, it's play the audio button, the little blue button.
I know. I'm not sharing my audio, so you probably won't be able to hear it. And actually, the blue button has not showed up for me.
Well, you have to close. I think you clicked on the chicken picture and it's enlarged. Okay. So if you click on the blue button, not for that one, switch it over to the one on the right.
Hang on. Oh. Oh, I heard that. You guys didn't because it's not showing my audio.
Anyway, he does a chicken.
I was like,
did it make a chicken?
I think we'll all have to go look at it to hear it. So that
Ruth, move the definition 1 over. So slide it to the left. Yeah. Now play it.
Chicken. Oh, that's.
So I've got a question for you, John. If you, sorry, Jack.
You guys can't hear this, can you?
I can hear it because I know what it says, but
very slightly. It said chicken. Oh.
So that's my 9-year-old son.
That's brilliant.
And he does all the eggs on the property. He takes care of the chickens. He shuts the door every night. So he knows chickens really well.
Yeah.
And he can imitate both the hen and the rooster. And so he did the chicken calls, which is great. I mean, it's really entertaining to listen to it.
Yeah,
let me do that one more time. Hang on. Listen, guys. Oops.
A rooster says, a hen says,
But let's say you're from India or something, right? And you don't speak English.
It's really good.
First of all, you don't have to read the definition. You could just look at it. And second of all, if you press that button and you hear an actual chicken call or a rooster cockle-doodle-doo, you know exactly what that word is. You don't even have to read the definition.
So my question is Jack, is that if you put a word in and you forgot to actually put the sound in, or the sound of the word in, and the word's already in the dictionary, how do you go back and then add a word later? Is that...
Yeah, so again, we're not an MVP, so the final answer is much cooler than what I'll tell you. What I'll tell you right now is just redo it. So if you put in a definition that's not really up to your own standards and you want to make it better, then just resubmit it with the fix, and it'll be in there twice for a little while. But over time, people will vote up the better one, and the bad one will kind of fade into the background. Right. And so if you look up, somebody put up a word bounty. At the time, it was a record like $3 or something for the word Jesus, which really isn't a dictionary word, but it was an interesting experiment. And we got something like 7 definitions, and we got totally lucky. And all 7 definitions were written by someone of a different religion. So there was a Hindu, there was an atheist, there was a Christian, Protestant, there was a Catholic, and there was even a Muslim, and almost every religion was represented. And all the definitions for Jesus were completely different. Like you almost laugh when you're reading them, because you're like, this is the weirdest definition ever. Like, if that one's not familiar to you. But
should I stop sharing?
Look up the word broadcast before you do that. I think that's the only word I've added. Tell me if this is an acceptable definition for you, Jack.
Yeah.
And then we can also, did you say that we can set bounties ourselves? So like each of our names or something, we could have a bounty for. Oh, did you do that one, Casey?
This is my definition addition to Slictionary. Broadcast. Yeah. My voice.
Wait, did your voice come through? Is there an audio? Yeah, I hear it.
Broadcast is all I said.
I love it. Look, it doesn't matter what I think. Right now, it's the winning definition. And so it's great. And you did a great job. You put a picture in, you've got the audio, and I think your grammar's probably pretty good. So I think it's a winner. Now, you're going to have to undergo competition as we grow, and you'll see how it performs, because if you go, for instance, Ruth, if you hit your money button link on the upper right, that's called My Slictionary. And this is where your stats are going to be. Now, we have very rudimentary stats in here at the moment, which is how many likes you've gotten. So Ruth, I think you'll have more than 0, but we'll see. I don't know why that's taking so long to come in. And then on the bottom, if you go to the left and you click on that My Smith definitions.
I've not defined any words. Yeah, I'm bad.
Oh, you have not defined anything. Okay.
I've intended to.
No problem. But it would just list all the words that you've defined, right? And then on the right, it lists the words, the definitions that you actually own. And some of those you've defined, but some of them maybe you didn't, which is even cooler. And that's our word baron feature, which allows people to invest in words without actually creating the definitions. And so if you hit the upper right tombstone on the far upper right, it says wanted.
Wanted.
Yeah, it looks like one of those old Western reward things.
Posters.
This is word bounty. So you can come here and make money by clicking on any word that you like there and defining it and entering in a competition for the amount of money that you see on the far left. So if you look up, for instance, I'm trying to think of one that might have more than one entry. I don't think, and I think all of them probably just have one entry at the moment.
Didn't you? Oh, is this on the word bounty thing? There's a lot of words on there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Oh, somebody's put in a bounty for Ruthful. I didn't even know that was a word.
I saw a boomer. What was the definition for that? Up boomer.
Oh yeah.
I want to see.
Yeah, go ahead and swipe the button.
Am I voting for it? Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to vote. There probably is only one definition for it at the moment, but you can see what it is and vote for it. Okay, now this person did a pretty good job because they put a photo in. see if they put audio in, but now you can vote for it with a light bulb. And if there's no other competitors,
pronunciation audio file, be the first.
Yeah, that's our default. But this person, what are they, 16901 or something? If nobody enters the contest after a week, they will win the $1 in BSV and get paid. And that will go right to their Money Button wallet. Now, if someone else enters the competition, it's 1 week, and whoever gets the most votes takes down the bounty. And so, as you can tell, at scale, like I said before, as things get really humming and we have a lot of competitive wordsmiths, there'll be more competition, and there'll be more probably bigger bounties as we have sponsors, which we'll have coming up this year, where we sponsor certain words for higher amounts of money. We did one of those at the CoinGeek New York. We put up the word conference for $100, and we got 27 competitors. And it turns out that Crypto Acorns, otherwise known as Josh Hensley, ended up winning the $100. And so we'll have more of those. And that's when it really gets interesting. But right now, it's actually the best time to come and define words, because you can make little $1 here, $2 here, $3 here just by defining these words. And if the person who puts up the bounty puts it up for $2 or more, they become the owners of the definitions that the wordsmiths write. And so this is very much like the art world, right? Michelangelo didn't finance any of his own materials or time. He had the Medicis commission him, right? So the Medicis financed him working on the Sistine Chapel, or Raphael chipping out the David statue, and they got their time paid for, and they made money up front. So Michelangelo and Raphael may have not been that rich, right? But they had a good living, because the Medicis would constantly say, oh, now do this in the square, do another statue, do another painting, paint the Sistine Chapel, right? But the owner at the end of the day is the person that financed it, right? Now, that's not to say that Michelangelo can't do his own paintings. You can do that on Slictionary, and you earn all the money, and you own your own definition. But if you want to get paid up front, then you go to Word Bounty, and you can be a creative person to earn that $100 reward and get paid up front. Now, the sponsor of the conference was CoinGeek. And so CoinGeek is going to own an NFT, or a token, that represents all 27 of those definitions. And the really cool part, and this is why I say we work on all this Bitcoin-y stuff more so than the UI or the UX right now, is because the cool part is we put each definition on about 40 to 50 cents worth of Bitcoin. So we don't just put your definition on chain, we put it on coin. And why is this cool? Because if one of the definitions for conference was awful, in fact, it was one of our best wordsmiths, Sidom, he made a mistake and he hit the swipe button and somehow erased everything that he'd put in the box. And so it ended up being like a blank. But we put that blank on 40 cents of BSV, right? And it sits there. And as long as that definition is in our dictionary and it's terrible, it occupies 40 cents. It's like hodling, right? You're occupying 40 cents of BSV in the blockchain. But what CoinGeek is going to do is they're going to look at all their NFTs, all 27 of them, and they're going to pick out that bad one, and they're going to hit the redeem button. And they're going to be incentivized to do it because they're going to get 50 cents back, right? Mm-hmm. And by redeeming that token, they are erasing the bad definition that's on the token. So they're releasing.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah. They're releasing the information on the coin, and they're getting the coin back. And this is just like the container shipping world, right? It's like when the bananas inside the container are bad, you turn it upside down, you empty it into the dump, and now you have an empty container, which is probably worth $10,000 or $20,000 because it's what empty containers go for. And that's how Bitcoin works, right? When it's storing information, when the Bitcoin is sitting on 50 cents and it's Craig's definition of Bitcoin, that is an artistic artifact probably worth $100,000 or $1 million, right? You don't touch that. You don't care about the 50 cents that it sits on, right? In the Pharaoh's time, it took them 300 ounces to build King Tut's mask. That's a lot of gold. Right now, if you had 300 ounces of gold, that'd probably pay for your kid's education. But you don't melt it down because it's the King Tut's mask. It's a 3,000-year-old beautiful artifact, right? That's what our definitions become that are good. If Casey's broadcast definition earns a ton of money and becomes very popular, maybe she becomes, the #1 radio personality in the world, then everybody would go, oh my God, Casey Hamilton defined broadcast. How cool is that? She did it before she was even famous. And now people are going to keep coming back to that thing. Going to keep coming back as an artifact. Maybe it's not the definition they use to learn what broadcast means, but it'll have a high ranking and it'll have a higher value as an artifact than it will on the 50 cents that it sits on. And so what this substrate does is help clean up the dictionary. It keeps the good definitions and inspires the bad ones to be deleted.
Amazing. That's so clever.
That is the true art to our website over time.
I think you're defining models here that are going to be used by other people as well in other businesses.
We think so too. Yeah.
That's very clever.
This is why, and we're having a lot of trouble right now. As I said, we're not at MVP. We should have been back in probably August or October. We're having a lot of troubles with the infrastructure. And so we're pushing other companies very, very hard because our end is actually easier to write the code for and theirs is harder. And they're doing things in Bitcoin that, like you said, Ruth, I think everybody's going to use this. Whether we're successful or not almost doesn't matter to them, because if they help us build this stuff, other companies will do it the same way. And one of us will be successful. Now, I think it's going to be us, but I'm realistic. Who knows? But the point is allowing information to cheaply go on coin where it's a reasonable amount of money, right? I don't want to be charged $1 to redeem a 50-cent token. That would be negative 50 cents to me. But if I can redeem it for a half a penny or 2 pennies, and the 50 cents becomes $50 because BSV goes to 10,000 or something, then all this starts to work out, right? And it becomes very, very understandable to everyone, right? When you redeem a bad definition, you get a little bit of money back. You don't need to be a genius to understand the economics of that, right? What the putting underneath is difficult. That's what we're doing. But to understand it from a user's level becomes very simple economic decision. And that's what we think is the super duper beauty of Bitcoin. It's on one hand, you have an empty Bitcoin, and the other you have, Casey's broadcast amazing artifact. And one is purposefully empty and you use it as money. The other is an NFT token that truly is a work of art, and you save it. And the ones that aren't a work of art, we delete it, and we pay you to delete it, or we incentivize it.
Amazing. It has a lot in common with Daniel Kraiwitz's proof of work concepts, I think. The incentives are there for it to be self-organizing.
Can you onboard people to BSV through Slictionary without actually having any BSV to start with?
Yes, and great question. And Ruth, what did you just finish with? I wanted to touch upon that really quickly.
Self-organizing.
Yeah, our name is Slictionary. It actually stands for Self-Learning Dictionary. And the reason is because the feedback loop, every interaction with our dictionary makes our dictionary stronger. When Casey writes broadcast into the dictionary, we're a better dictionary, right? Now we have an actual definition. When someone competes with her, it gets better. When someone competes with her and the public, you all vote for the best definition, which then rises to the top, we become even more efficient. So every interaction makes us stronger. And that's why it's so fun to put our product out early, because every interaction helps and it makes us stronger. Diddy, the answer to your question, you asked, what was it again?
Can you onboard people through Slictionary without having any BSV to start with?
Yeah, so I'm the mobile developer, so I'm writing the native iOS app, to use the technical terms. And one of the decisions I have is, do I use a wallet that you'd all be familiar with, that kind of like the website, you need money button. I could use hand cash. And so when you download our app on the App Store, on the Apple App Store, I could make it so that you could use hand cash or RelayX or Centbee or anybody. But there's an even more interesting thing that we're considering as I finish up the iOS app, which is, what if, and tell me what you think, what if we charged maybe 99 cents to download the app, or $5 or $19, and what we gave you in return was credit, meaning if you want to put up Ruth for $5 or even $10 and see what all the wordsmiths create from that, we would just deduct, maybe Ruth downloaded the app and paid $19, but then she can take 10 of that 19 and apply it to a word bounty where she ends up owning all these NFTs at the end, and she's getting something back. And by the way, those NFTs have cash flows, right? As people look up Ruth or Ruthless, they will come in and vote, and she'll be getting money back, right? So this isn't you pay $20 down to download our app and you get nothing in return. You can own definitions, or you can use the money to write definitions at a penny a pop. That'll last a long time. Or we can just let you seek anything you want, all the way up to what $20 would get you like 2,000 lookups, right? That'll last you a lifetime, right? That's like buying a dictionary back in the 90s. You pay $25 in college and you can look up words the rest of your life, right? So $20 could be a key point. And here's the cool part. If we do that, we would still pay Ruth in BSV. So then we could say, Ruth, if you just want a dictionary for $20, and we'll work that amount down until you hit zero. And if God knows you're some kind of writer and you're using the heck out of our app, then maybe you have to reload after like 10 years or something, put another $20 in. But let's say that's enough for life, and you're writing definitions, so you're earning money. When we pay you, we need a hand cash address, or we need a money button address, or we need a Slictionary wallet address. We got to pay it to something, and we're not paying you in dollars. So if you want to come pick up all the money you've made, then get yourself a Bitcoin wallet. And that's a much different incentive than, hey, go download Money Button if you want to use our site. That's a royal, horrible pain in the ass onboarding problem. But if I say to you, hey, remember you downloaded our app for $5 and you ended up like getting a bunch of early NFTs. Well, one of them was Casey's amazing broadcasting that she wrote for you, and you handed her $1 for that. Now you own it. And guess what? It now makes $1,000 a year. And hey, dummy, you've got $1,500 sitting ready for us to ship to you, but we need a wallet address or you're not getting it. So go make one. Now it's a totally different onboarding thing, right? Now you're like, yeah, let me get my money. Let's become part of the BSV ecosystem. I get it now. And so we're debating whether to do that. So what do you ladies think? Would you rather to have us just put another wallet in like hand cash or Centbee, or would you rather pay in dollars to the Apple Store using Apple Pay? You load in $20 and we eat it down to zero over time.
Oh, I really like that idea. I think you should do it as well, if not instead. I mean, it's a great way of onboarding people, isn't it?
I'd really like to
hear.
I would really like to hear Ryan's take on this, seeing as
Hello, Jack. I just wanted to. You mentioned the word infrastructure, and I got really interested all of a sudden. I was interested in everything, but I felt compelled to comment on something just because what you're doing is so aligned with what Casey and I are doing. We're building an entire collaboration of businesses that are solving our mutual protocol problem. And I'm writing an email that I'm going to send to you. And I figured I'd jump in and take the chance to just talk in person very briefly here. But everything you just said is so relevant to what we're doing at a technical protocol level that I'm hoping we can talk about this in detail. But basically, first of all, I agree with what you just said. You should do exactly what you just said. There can still be a Bitcoin wallet, though. So what we're going to do is with this collaboration that we're creating called the Social Bitcoin Web Collaboration. We now have 50 people involved in this. Okay, you're on the list. You don't know this yet, but we added you. But we have a bunch of other people that know they're on the list too. But it includes you. And so we're building all the protocols, but we're also building the software. And the software will be available for people in the collaboration called OpenSPV. So what you can do is you can do exactly what you said. The users can pay with Apple Pay on mobile, on Apple, or they pay with Stripe on the web, or they pay with Google Pay on Android or whatever. use the local payment system. There can still be a Bitcoin wallet built in, though, and this is important for a lot of reasons, because the user needs to do stuff like sign things. They may not know what's going on, but they probably want to sign that they created a definition or something. So there's some authentic way to relate the user to the dictionary definitions that they created. We've also solved, in theory, all the user experience problems with getting a Bitcoin wallet going where the user doesn't even know that's what's going on. So we've solved one really important problem, that they won't even know, they won't even have to have a password or a mnemonic while still actually managing their own keys. So the user experience problem of going through a third-party service such as MoneyButton or Handcash completely goes away. You're going to be able to embed this inside your application. So the user pays with dollars. They don't have a password, much less a mnemonic, but everything is still authentic, on-chain, signed Bitcoin, all this stuff. And so they can withdraw with Bitcoin if they want to, however that works. So there's a giant suite of protocols that if you're interested, you can collaborate on. Because then what this can be is, Slictionary is not just an app. It also defines the protocols that anyone can use. So we can look up, Slictionary style definitions for things using any app. What do you think?
Right. No, I absolutely love it. And if you want to help build our wallet and make it better and more secure,
that's exactly.
I'll be the first person to sign up for it. But I'll make a deal with you that's even better. Nobody knows this because we took it off of the site, but on the Lucky You page, right? I used to advertise Slictionary as the most complete, but the slowest dictionary in the world. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
If you look up a word and it's not in Slictionary, we gave you the option of putting your email in or just using your Bay Mail, because as you know, Ryan, everybody who has a money button also has a Bay Mail, even if they don't know it. And what we used to do is say, look, we didn't have your word, right? We're an early dictionary. We only have 100 words in the dictionary back then. And this was one of our first things. We would say, but when someone defines it, well, first of all, we'll take your penny and we'll make a bounty out of it. And when that accumulates to a high enough amount, let's say it gets to $6 or something, and someone goes, well, shoot, I'd like to make $6. So they define it. As soon as the bounty is over and the winners decide, we then send you the link to the definition for free. And so maybe it took 6 months for that to build up and someone finally defines it. And we eventually send you the definition that you look for. So you do get something for your penny that way. Now, the problem is we had this weird money button problem, and I'd have to get technical with you, but it was sort of an order of operations thing where they couldn't enter their email address very well because the money button was one of those, I call it the blank check money button, where you can put your own amount in, and it just didn't work right. So we had to scrap it. But the idea is beautiful, which is you come to Slictionary and we have every word in the dictionary, including ones that don't exist yet. So you could look up a word that you make up. And if you apply that penny to word bounty, and enough people do that, eventually it's going to get defined. And when it gets defined, we email it to you and we pay the money to email it. So whatever Baymail was at the time, 2 pennies, it probably cost us more money to give people the definition over time than they paid us. But that's okay because we're an early dictionary and we're happy to have the inspiration for more words to be created. But I would love, if you're doing the heart mail, I would love to just put a little thing in there. It just says, either use your Heartmail wallet, in which case you already have a Heartmail mail account, and we'll send you the definition when it's Smith, or, put your email in, I guess, and we could do it that way too. But it would be beautiful if it worked with an actual BSV email product.
Yeah.
That's the collaboration. That's
exactly what we're doing. So we can do it both ways simultaneously, which is we're building that software for heartmail.com. So it will integrate email and Paymail. So everybody, we're actually launching an email product first because it's much easier to get that going, but there will be Paymail as well. But we're providing the same software to businesses such as yours to integrate the entire thing into your app. In other words, if the user already has a Heartmail and they want to log in with their Heartmail account, they can do that. But if they don't have that and they don't have anything else, they can sign up with Slictionary first. So they'll be able to essentially sign up with their own existing email address. Okay, so everything's email first. So they can just log in with email, and their existing email provider, such as Google, probably doesn't support Paymail, but you will if you use this software. So you'll provide that as a service. So then they get their Paymail from you. So they don't even have to use a third-party service at all. They can use your service directly. They're only going to use a third-party service or their own service if that's what they prefer. So they will be able to log in with Heartmail, but they can also log in with their own, because we're also going to make it as easy as possible to get going at jackpitts.com or whatever. So the users can use their own domain name as well. So I completely agree with what he said about email. Email is, people complain about it, but the thing is, it has highly desirable properties, which are, it's truly decentralized in exactly the most practical way, which is why all businesses still use it.
Right.
It's not going away. And starting with email and extending email with Paymail solves all these issues. So yeah, so the user will, and I love your idea too. It's the perfect way to bootstrap that. So the user can type in anything. You don't have the definition yet, but you do in 6 months. So they get a link in 6 months. Now they're reminded that your app exists. They finally get the definition they're looking for. They go back. I think that's a great idea, and it can work exactly like that. And they'll have a very good user experience if you plug this directly into the app too.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the other thing, and this is not Slictionary related, but the thing that you really need when you have a BSV email system is, of course, the spam prevention, where you go to some site and they want your email and you're like, oh God, I totally don't want to give this site my email. Let me give them my Bay mail or my Heartmail. And then you want to spam me all you want. I just set my setting at 3 cents or $1 or whatever. You're not getting through. But the problem is right now with the way Bay mail was set up was you couldn't use a Bay mail like you could an email. In other words, like you couldn't use it on a random site. That's the part. I don't know how to solve that.
Exactly. Let me say, because this is exactly what we're going to solve. So here's how that should work. First of all, email should work as is, but we're going to extend email with Paymail. The user can opt in to essentially creating a pay for whitelist. So the way this will work is just imagine it's on heartmail.com, but it can be anywhere. So imagine you have jack@heartmail.com. Normal email. You log in with your email app on your desktop or something like this. But in your Heartmail settings, you say, okay, I want to block all messages if I don't know who they are and they haven't yet paid me 1 cent. So you turn on essentially like a 4-pay whitelist. Now your contacts will be whitelisted by default because they're your contacts. But you can then create a whitelist of everybody who pays 1 cent. So if the sender supports this Paymail extension, they will query your Paymail service provider, which can be yourself or can be Heartmail or whatever. In this case, it's Heartmail because it's jack@heartmail.com. It says, in order to send an email, you must first pay 1 cent. So they pay 1 cent to get added to your whitelist, and then they can send you an email. This can be built into standard email clients, okay, in a completely decentralized way. So we literally extend email. It's better than any of these other apps that anyone else has created, because there's another one called BitBounce or whatever. But this is better because if your email service provider supports this protocol, it can truly be added to existing email. So we can just add this in. We can add in the payment feature to existing email. So you'll be able to turn that on and just start blocking anybody that hasn't paid to add themselves to your whitelist.
You couldn't possibly build this quick enough for me.
Okay, well, there you go.
Or the world.
Perfect.
It's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, the next concept, I'll tease it a little bit as a special to Women of BSV, but we've created a system where I would say the intellectual athlete reigns supreme, which is you got to craft some nice grammar and handy, clever wordiness, and maybe you can add a picture too. But what we'd like to make it is now make it better for the artists. And I'm referring specifically mainly to the picture. And so what we're going to do is create sort of a similar incentive system that we have for writing definitions, but for pictures. And then what we'll have is a database of pictures that instead of going onto the internet and DuckDuckGoing some image search and then, doing the old Command-Shift-4 or whatever to take a screenshot of it and then putting it on our dictionary, what I'd rather have you do is maybe, commission an artist, like a true Medici style transaction where you sort of do like what we're doing with Word Bounty, but with a picture. And then all you artists, Korppi, you can then come in and go, hey, and we call this Project Manatee versus T-Rex, because the first time I was unable to find what I was looking for using image search was I wanted a picture of a T-Rex fighting a manatee. And it was the only thing I couldn't find on Google image search. So I was like, why couldn't I just pay $3 and have someone draw it for me?
Yeah.
Right? Or maybe 3 people draw it for me and I pick the best one. Once you can do that, now you are creating definitions that are truly works of art. And when people say, like they go, oh, rare, the NFT is rare. Ours will be the rarest. It will be one of one, right? There will be one, Ryan, you should look up while you're here, Ryan's definition of button. He was one of our first users. I kind of forced him to define button, and he did a nice, clever job on it, which is kind of tongue in cheek because he was running Money Button at the time. But in any case, when you design your own picture, it makes it even more special. And so I think that's where we're headed in the next. If we can get it done by May, that would be amazing and presented in Dubai or something. But probably not the way things are going with the token world. We have to wait for our partners to kind of almost provide us the means to do some of this stuff, but we'll get it done eventually this year. And I think once we put that out, then we really will be MVP complete. And then Ruth and Diddy, we can start working on all the UI, and hopefully we'll just hire you. We'll go, please work for structured linguistics and come fix our UI and slow down our Doctor Who time warp things. Put a little slider there, slow it down for people, whatever. I love all that stuff. I love design. I'm not great at it, but I love artists and I love watching all that stuff happen. So
I warn you, Jack, that you'd have difficulty stopping me. Honestly, I'm already thinking to myself, I'm going to have a little mess with this. I'm obviously not going to touch your website, but I'm going to provide you with a few pages and see what you think.
Please do.
Just, if nothing else, to give you a bit of inspiration, maybe on whatever. Do whatever you will with it. Maybe nothing. But
I just looked at Ryan's button definition, and there is a. Can I share it?
Yeah,
please do.
Okay, so
That's a 2020 classic.
There we go. So it's a button is an early version of Money Button that did not send money, but did something else instead. Usually involves being pressed rather than swiped. Used in a sentence, I pressed the button and the light turned on, but no one got any money.
Oh, that's brilliant.
That's brilliant.
Well done, Ryan.
Now,
well done.
That is what I'm talking about. When we're going to also offer Ryan the chance to turn that definition that he wrote, instead of it sitting on Firebase, we're going to say, Ryan, pay us 6 cents or $6, whatever it might work out to be. Say, hey, why don't you record this forever onto a coin? And then the coin will sit in Ryan's wallet, his Heartmail wallet, which will take Stas tokens or whatever token we end up on if Stas doesn't work out. And it will sit there on the coin, and it'll sit there every day and go, Ryan, does this definition suck? And we'll give you 50 cents if you redeem it and take it off our dictionary. Or is this legendary and you keep it forever and forget about the 50 cents it sits on? That'll just, take up space on the blockchain forever while he controls it. And there's where you're really owning your own data, right? People think immutable ledger means it's on there forever. No, it means Ryan controls his data. He decides if that thing becomes legendary, he passes it on to his kids and his grandkids. It just goes on forever, right? King Tut's helmet, same concept. You don't melt it down for the gold, you keep it forever. But you don't keep everything. You just keep the important stuff. And that's where I think Bitcoin gets really, really cool. Because when Slictionary gets too big and then the price of BSV goes up because we're taking up too much space, it inspires people to get rid of the crap. And there's sort of where we're going long term, right? Look up stuff on Google and realize that little thing that they're so proud of it, and it says, "Oh, you looked up Popty Ping, which is Welsh for a microwave oven, and it has like 27,000 pages of Popty Ping. Nobody wants that. 5 would be good, right? 5 really crafty ones for Popty Ping would be great. You don't need anything else." And so we want to make the internet smaller, not bigger, but we want to make it more efficient. Get rid of the crap and keep the legendary stuff or the stuff that helps you learn quicker, all that kind of thing. And that I think is the key to Bitcoin. It's what do we keep as information on the coin, and that battle between, well, should we empty it because we need money? right? And it's that battle that will set the price. And I think in about 10 years, we'll all know this, but we're trying to build the thing that gets us there.
No, that's so cool. And I know you're not building Wikipedia, but like it's got some traits in common with it. Let's be honest. Maybe this is the way Wikipedia should have been built.
We're not going to give you too much more information, Ruth. You'd have to get a Navy submarine clearance to find out more about what you're talking about. But
I can see how it would work. Yeah,
that's wonderful. Our company's not called Slictionary for a reason. It's called Structured Linguistics, which is structured information that has a value, a monetary value, and is repeatable, structured, not the chats and we're the opposite of a social network. Mm-hmm. We want repeatable, come back time after time information. That's what we do. And
dictionary for geniuses.
What's that?
The dictionary for geniuses.
No, I think it's the dictionary for everyone. One of the cool things we'll do, Ruth, speaking of UX, is you can swipe left and swipe right. And the way our algorithm will work over time is we'll have a way to measure whether the definition is for pleasure or whether it's for learning. Mm-hmm. And swipe right will be,
that's a good idea.
Give me better learning.
So you could have like the funny version.
Right. And swipe left would be like, no, I'm kind of looking to laugh or be amazed at what artist has, put his own art in for NFT. So one of my favorite examples is like for the word art, right? Nobody's going to look up the word art. Nobody buys a dictionary and looks it up. It's almost a waste of a definition. But in our dictionary, you could see Banksy putting an original piece. You could see Jasper Johns putting one right next to him. And then if they're at the dinner party, like in we're ginormous dictionary, right? We're ranked number 9 or something, which means we get billions of hits. And Jasper Johns is having a conversation with Banksy's wife, and he's like, "Where are you ranked for the word art in the dictionary?" And it's a source of pride. And Banksy's like, "Well, I'm number 1, of course, But think about that from the user perspective. Now the user goes not to look up what art means, but to pay 1 penny and swipe through completely original art by every artist, right? Maybe just one picture that Banksy does. It's just one original, but you get to go through and it's a 1 penny art museum that you can just sit there and swipe forever until you get to the local artist. There could be 1,000 definitions in there for art, and it just becomes a 1 penny museum. We might even have to charge more than 1 penny for that word because people might be swiping too long, and we'd end up with negative gross margins. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of cool stuff that makes the dictionary a place where you want to go to it. It's not a source of embarrassment because you don't know what ubiquity means anymore. I hate looking up words because every time I look one up, I realize how dumb I am, right? But if you go and you realize that the dictionary has pictures and it has famous people writing the definitions, Robert De Niro is saying the word money or Godfather or whatever, then it becomes a dictionary of intrigue where it's as much entertaining as it is where you can learn things. And I think when you combine all that stuff together, you really end up with kind of the perfect dictionary. And I suppose there's a way to make it better, but if you give us enough time and enough ability to keep tweaking the model, I think we'll blow your socks off, even with just the dictionary before we move on to other things.
I already don't have any on. That's already been done, Jack. This is impressive. I'm really excited for you guys. I'm looking forward to growing with it. I want to get in there more and start being a wordsmith. Ryan's always challenging me. I'm like, what is that word? I'm always looking stuff up, listening to all these technical calls and everything. So,
well, the beauty is what I do is I write a lot of definitions, obviously. And when I look up a word, I look it up in Slictionary and I just hit the penny, donate it to the word bounty thing. And it sits there and it takes up space on word bounty at 1 penny. Nobody's going to touch it for a while because there's much bigger bounties. But it reminds me that I'm going to come back to it and define it and I really learn the word, right? So the cool thing is the old adage is if you can teach something, you actually really know it, right? Mm-hmm. And I always want to write a high quality definition rather than just throwing something in there. And so I spend time on it, right? I'll go to Google Books and try and figure out, who the first person that said, what's the word for like a robotic type person in the background. It actually stemmed from Dungeons and Dragons, NPC, non-player.
Yeah, non-player characters.
Yeah.
NPC. Yeah. So I just defined that this week, and I learned so much that I had no idea that it stemmed from Dungeons and Dragons in the 70s, which was a game that came out when I was a kid, and I didn't really like it, but it was still interesting to me that the first time anybody used it was for Dungeons and Dragons. And so by writing the definition, I actually learned more about it than most people would ever know. And I think that's cool for not the people who are just looking for a quick answer, but it's cool for what I would call the AI athletes that are coming in to get better at writing definitions and really, turn this into a business for them, where they own a bunch of definitions and they're getting paid, and it's great passive income and it's competitive. So I think it's fun. It's like a sport.
Wonderful. You make a fantastic case for it, and fun. We're coming up to 2 hours, so I think we should probably wrap it up, guys, unless anyone's got any. I mean, you could spend a minute telling us what Pi01 Ventures is, because I don't think you've told us that yet.
So I would call it like a proto venture firm, because we don't have a ton of money, but a lot of friends of mine from the stock world, the equity world in the New York City area all wanted to invest in the startups, because we realized that there's probably going to be a bigger opportunity there than in, hodling BSV or even investing in tall and waiting for things to go public and all that stuff. So to do that, we wanted to pool some money together, regardless of how big it was. And there did need to be kind of a minimum amount so that we could, not be wasting our time. But we raised that amount about 6 months ago, and we probably doubled or tripled it since then. And it's still not a lot of money. So I think had the double spend thing not happened in July and had certain other events not happen, we'd probably be 10 or 100 times bigger than that. But that's unfortunate. But the thing is, we're just looking to put money into what we think is a starving space for capital. And I know, there's a kind of a meme where everybody's saying you shouldn't need venture capital. But look, I don't. And look, BSV is great in that you don't need as much as maybe the .coms did, because they're all ad based. But speed is important in competition. And if we sat doing what we're doing, and one day everybody, the White Walkers all came into BSV with their Silicon Valley money and their New York financing, they could just copy everything that we're doing, blow us away, and we wouldn't have a chance.
Yeah,
right?
that would be irritating.
The one chance we have is we're ahead of them right now. We understand Bitcoin. We understand the cool things that it can do. We want to stay ahead of them. And that's why we're taking capital, not because we couldn't do this in our spare time and eventually it would work, right? But we want to be fast about it. We want to get this thing big and used and fast as soon as we can. And that's what the capital helps. It's just speed, right? It's it's in Pac-Man, the power pill, right? It's like you can still win the game without eating the power pills. Why would you not want to do it faster and take out a few ghosts on the way to it? And so Pi01 is Len Mazer is the head, and he's the face of Pi01. I just add a little bit of research and help raising some money, and he's sort of the brains behind it. And our goal is just to find really big returns as early as we can, meaning the closer you are to a startup with kind of an initial product, maybe the better. The things we're probably not going to be good at is something like companies that we really like and respect, like a Unisat or maybe even Tokenize or something. We're kind of late to that game. And so their valuations are higher. Our amount of money isn't going to affect them much. But these startups that are brand new concepts, like a Heartmail would be a good example. If you guys were raising money, but stuff like that's early on, and we like the person and we think that they're going to work their ass off. That's what we're looking for, right? Because the main thing is we think that BSV is capital starved, and anything we can do to correct that situation over time, the earlier, the better.
I think you're exactly right. That sounds wonderful. Yeah, good for you.
And lastly, since it wasn't addressed, we have a podcast that's investing based called Diamonds in the Rough. It's on Streamanity. And the reason is because we don't want to give it away for free. So we need an avenue to get people to pay for the content. And our theme is that even if we charge $8, $16, or 20 cents, you're better off getting information from people who are professional business people, especially when you're young, than not getting the information. So we're not perfect. We're not going to, make you rich potentially, but we can help you with your process of knowing what to do with your excess money as you build it up. And the whole point is it's sort of like a cross between Jim Cramer, but not as stupid, and Louis Rukeyser, which is the guy my dad would watch on PBS or what do you call that radio station? NPC or whatever it's called. NPR. Yeah. So we're sort of a cross between boring old guys in suits and the rolled up sleeve Jim Cramer guy who hits bells and whistles like a clown. We want to be sort of entertaining, but not too entertaining. And we want to be super informative, but not stiff collared.
No, that's how I heard about you originally. Was I was watching your podcasts on Streamanity, and they are really good.
They are.
Well, thank you.
They were pricey. It was at least $15 for the episode on Tao. And another concept is the onboarding problem or on-ramp problem, where if you live in a state where you can't buy BSV, then you're more likely to not be so interactive on games. But if you can earn BSV, then you can play more games and watch more podcasts. So I certainly am going to watch video 2 of that series you made.
Oh, well, thank you. What's funny about what you just mentioned is I put $1 into Twitch on behalf of the podcast in March of last year. That's what, 10 months ago or something? I just put another $1 in today. I ran out of it. And part of that is just because it's hard to spend money in BSV on any app. No matter where you go, there's like a potential to make money just by being you. And it ends up being marketing. And it doesn't matter what app you use, but it ends up being marketing that's almost hard to spend. And that is an amazing concept.
It's amazing. I know.
For BSV in general.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you for getting the good word out in all the ways that you do. We're listening. You're a fantastic person to talk to. I wish we could go on longer, but I think we've probably all got other things we need to go and do, including you, I suspect.
Well, get me.
I'm already
ladies,
putting words in there.
Ladies, give me some investable concepts so we can have you on our show.
Yeah.
Excellent.
We're working on it.
And it really has been, I remember when I first saw you, John, in the scene. I don't know if it was LinkedIn or maybe on a video somewhere, but I felt very excited, and I felt just like a bright horizon on the future because you were here.
Well, thank you.
So I don't know, something about you is very powerful.
It is. I first saw you on Bitcoin's Got Talent.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably my worst moment. Yeah. Well, I think it's going back to what you guys were talking about earlier, which is it takes so much time and effort to be positive and to build things. You don't have time to fight people. You don't have time to fight your enemies. And the more you get distracted, and I do it all the time, right? I'm number one guilty of trying to put someone down who's giving me shit from BTC or whatever, maybe a bankster or whatever. Just there's evil people all over the damn place that don't even know they're evil, and you want to fight them. But I can tell you for a fact that I spent 10 years fighting bad banks and bad regulators and all that stuff, and the only injured party was me, right? Mm-hmm. There are cases. The best way to, as you said, the best way to beat your enemy is to ignore them and go towards the light and build the beautiful thing that people don't pay attention to the bad thing anymore, and you run them out of business.
Yep.
That's it.
That's what we're doing. It's what we're all doing in our own way. So thank you for your contributions to humanity. It's a pleasure watching you create all of this stuff for us to use. And I enjoyed hanging out with you today.
Yeah, so did I. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
And I'm gonna hit end now. Thank you so much, Sean. I'm sure I'll speak to you again soon. Bye.
See you, Jack.